want to start. Welcome everybody who came here, and welcome in particular Rebecca, and also thank you so much Ekene and the UMIH for hosting this event. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge that the University of Manitoba is located on original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories, we acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. So, I would like just to introduce Rebecca with 2 sentences. Rebecca Duclos is a professor of art history at Concordia University in Montreal. She's also a former dean, and she is a university certified death doula. She might talk about this also a little bit today. And I met Rebecca for the first time yesterday on Zoom, which was a very pleasant conversation. And I found her very accidentally when I was looking for something totally different on the website of the Concordia University. So I'm really super pleased that this happened in an unexpected way and that she immediately agreed to give this talk and had some really very interesting, creative, interactive idea for it. And with this, welcome everybody. I would like to hand over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Simone. And as Simone says, this wonderful invitation came out of the blue, and I'm so happy that it did for many reasons. One of which is that I'm getting to meet the research group. I'm also getting to meet some of you who are interested in topics around death and dying. But particularly, Simone's invitation gave me the opportunity to do something that I have been wanting to do for about 1.5 years now, since the beginning of the pandemic. And that was to complete a play manuscript, which I did just last week. So that will figure in heavily to today's discussion. And I hesitate to say presentation because the one thing that Simone was very happy to do was to let me sort of hijack a professional opportunity to dial down the sort of research arena of presentation and actually make this almost more like a writing workshop. So you are all now going to become unwitting participants in a theatrical drama that I would like to share with you. So as part of that, why don't I begin by looking at the title of the talk, which I think was on the poster for all of you. I'm just going to pull up my slide. Everybody see everything all right?
Yes.
Thank you, Simone. I'm getting a little, my connection is unstable, so do let me know if you can't hear me or can't see the images. Just go ahead and pipe up and stop. So again, thank you so much for joining me today for about 1.5 hours. We'll have a sort of session together for 1 hour. That will be, and then I think, a Q&A, and it's very casual. So honestly, if there's something that you want to talk about while I'm sharing certain things with you, please don't hesitate to interrupt me. The title for today, you're all smart people, so you realize that death scripts is actually a double entendre. On the one hand, we are literally going to be looking at a script, a theatrical dramatic script. But for me, this script has also operated a bit like a doctor's script, a prescription, as it were, for healing. And I use that word not only for myself, but really it's a kind of, writing this play has been a healing process for my dead mother, I hope. And you'll see why, and I'll talk you through that. So again, it's a very personal reflection. This is not an academic research presentation. It's a very personal sharing of this dramatic therapeutic script with you. And the final part of the title centers around the notion of dialogic writing. And as most dramas are, full of dialogue. And for me, it was very important that I was able to use this the dramatic form, which is one that I'm not personally very familiar with. I come from the art historical field, not so much the theater field, but the act of writing dialogue allowed me to bring in conversations and to have conversations occur between my mother and various figures who are all based on real life figures, and I'll tell you more about them. But what they say to each other is something that I wished my mother could have said at her deathbed. She did not. And so the dialogue allowed me to, in a way, sort of re-inhabit those last 9 days of her dying process, and to give her the voice that I wish that she could have had. Okay, so this won't be so abstract. Let me introduce you to the protagonist. This is my mother, Gloria Duclos, and my father, Albert Duclos. Both of them are gone. My mother died in 1998, and my father about a decade later. My mother was a classicist, wonderfully trained in the 40s and 50s. She went to Radcliffe and then Oxford and then Harvard. Was fluent in ancient languages of Greek and Latin, taught philosophy, history, mythology, the whole thing. Really extraordinary and extraordinarily warm intellectual. My father, whom she met later in life, they didn't marry until their late 30s. My father had a very different career. He was born to French-Canadian parents in Maine. They owned a bakery after the war, and my father finished high school and became a stage actor, and was working in Cambridge, Massachusetts and New York City for almost 2 decades before he came back to Maine to take care of his aging parents. And in the 70s, particularly post-Vietnam War in America, there were a number of returning servicemen and women coming to school. So my father was not unusual in being in his mid-30s when he came to do his undergraduate degree. And as fate would have it, my mother was his teacher. So this is the two of them. And although my father does not appear in the play itself, I like to think that he's referred to many times. He's a sort of absent character in the play, but really the dramatic form, I believe, came from him. So I'll tell you more about that. As I mentioned before, the play that we'll look at together today is really made up of a number of discoveries and revelations that I made, like many of you do, if you've lost your parents, that I made about my mother only after she died. There was a process of discovery, of realizing that she had had many previous lives before we came into her life. And it's really taken me the better part of a decade to, in a kind of forensic, almost detective-like manner, uncover some of these stories. And so they are what the play script is really based upon. The impetus to write a play was not direct at all. I'll just a little sideline to say, when I finished my job as a dean, I finally had some time off, and it was something that I had wanted to do for quite a while, because my family was very active in the Dying with Dignity movement, was to do a death doula certificate, which I did at the University of Vermont. And it was a fantastic thing for me to be able to go back to school myself. And through this process, it really gave me time to reflect, but also to do quite a bit of writing, which was part of the death doula certificate. It also gave me a new sort of lease on life in terms of I was able to also return to volunteer work at the palliative care ward here at the Jewish General Hospital. So these two things were happening in my life just in the early pandemic years. And then in addition, here's where the crux of the matter really lies. I decided that if I was going to do something for myself in terms of a kind of creative visitation of my mother's death, which I was a very, very big part of, I needed to seclude myself and to somehow allow things to happen. So I packed myself up for 10 days in a little log cabin in Quebec with enough firewood to last me for 10 days. There was no phone, there was no internet. It was just me and all of my mother's articles, many of my family letters, including also letters that I had exchanged with friends of my mother after she died. And many of these letters were part of the revelation process for me to discover that she had many other existences, as it were, before I knew her. So much to my surprise, what emerged was a full-blown theatrical narrative. And I will tell you that I have never written a play in my life. This was something that was surprising and wonderful to me. Full-on dialogues were coming into my head, and I could barely move my hand and the pen fast enough to record what was seemingly going on with my mother in my head. So it was, you know, if you know anything about Mahai Csikszentmihalyi, this notion of flow, I guess, is something that I had never really experienced in this way. And I just went with it. I let this happen. And so you will be seeing the fruits of some of those labors. And in fact, as I said, just last week was the time for me to finally type this up. So I'll say a little bit, but not too much about the play, because I'd rather just have us get right into it, and to have you be both actors and audience for me. For now, it's called Gloria Exeunt, which is obviously a nod to her classical for that character leaving the stage. So I love the title that is plays on both sides. Before I dig into the first scene, I do just want to say that although the dramatic form has not been one that I was familiar with, there are certain reasons, I think, why this was the form that emerged for me to talk about my mother's dying process. And that has a lot to do with my father, who this is a wonderful headshot of him in 6 characters in search of an author. And not that I believe in, I don't know, spirits, but I do think that there was some influence from my father to help me write this play. So I really want to acknowledge him in his way. The other acknowledgement I want to make is actually to Concordia University. They really encouraged me to start telling some family stories. So they kind of put me on the road. I was one of many professors who would do these walrus talks. I'm not sure if any of them have come to U of M. This was one that I gave about my father, and some other discoveries about him that I made after he died. These are 2 fantastic gay porno scripts that he had been secretly writing. So great. Then I gave another talk about my grandfather. So this is my mother's father, who is mentioned many times in the play, who I think worked for the OSS or CIA. So that has been another series of discoveries. And then Concordia invited a group of us to basically do a no script improv storytelling evening. And this was the one where I explored aspects of my mother's life. And it was really this kind of moment where I felt like there was a story there. And so what we'll be reading today is essentially, the script is a very simple one that revolves around the last 9 days of her life. It was a very chosen death, as you'll see. She decided to die in her own bedroom, and we were all around her, and there was lots of preparation for this. And so I won't say anything more about that, because I'd rather that the script reveal it. And I'm really hoping that that Gloria will reveal herself to you as we go through this process. So as I say, the play is right now three acts with numerous scenes in each act. We'll just be looking at 5 excerpts today, and I focused specifically on 2 of the scenes revolve around medical practitioners who were part of our family team. Laura, who was her fantastic home hospice nurse, and Dr. Erickson, who had been her practicing physician for many years. They knew each other very, very well. And then you'll also meet a character named Janine, who was a friend of our families and was a kind of third daughter to my mother. And you'll also meet my sister, my older sister. And I'll just read you through the cast of characters. You'll meet some of them, but not all of them. At this moment, these are real people and real names. If anything actually happens with this script, all of these names will be changed. But when I was writing, I found that I needed to actually have the person in mind in order to create a character who knew my mother intimately, and so would have these dialogues with her that I had are totally imaginary, but the situation and the people are real. So Gloria Duclos, retired professor of classics, not yet 70, has chosen to die in her own bed, scholarly, genteel, exhibits typical New England resolve, exhausted by decades of pain from rheumatoid arthritis. Catherine Duclos, elder daughter, mid-30s, lives in the same coastal city as her parents, single mother of 2 children, intense, questioning, but eminently practical. Becky, which was my name as a kid, early 30s, close family ties, lives in Canada, previously studied classics and archaeology and traveled extensively with Gloria, playful, ready to serve. Dr. Erickson, mid-50s, Gloria's primary physician and supportive of her decision, gentle, compassionate, but cautious. Laura, mid-30s, home hospice nurse, seasoned professional with a slightly new age air. Shaw Livermore Jr., early 70s, Gloria's only brother, retired professor of American history, 6'7" chain smoker with a steel trap memory, fond of sparring with his sibling, member of the Hemlock Society. Janine, late 30s, friend of Duclos sisters and third daughter to Gloria, met during Gloria's Fulbright placement in Malawi, lives in LA. And finally, Jenny, mid-50s, Scottish, grew up as an expat in Malawi, returned in later life and met Gloria and daughters there, now lives in England. So the entire play happens in my mother's bedroom with these various cast of characters coming in and out. The time is in the late 90s. My mother actually died in 1998 in February. So I hope that you can get a sense of that moment. We're going to read from Act 1, Scene 1. And what I would love to do now, this is the fun part, where I will need 2 of you to help me read the lines. I will be reading all of the stage directions for you. Okay, so I'll read setting and at rise, but I'll also read even just the tiny little stage directions before and after you speak. And I would love to have two folks help me move through the scene. If one person would love to be my mother, Gloria, that would be great. And then the other person we'll meet is Laura, the home hospice nurse. So maybe Simone, you can help me find some readers.
Yes, so who of the audience would be willing to read some pages of the script of the first of 5 scenes here? I mean, if you now volunteer, it doesn't mean that you have to read through all 5 scenes, but that means for now you would be volunteering. So who's out there and loves to act something out here?
Don't be shy. It's a cold read, so it's like Saturday Night Live, everybody. We can make lots of mistakes. This is just amongst friends.
Nobody? I can't believe that. No hand up?
Stacy said that she's happy to volunteer.
Oh, lovely. Great.
Thanks, Stacy. Would you prefer to be, you can turn your mic off and talk to us. Do you want to be Gloria or do you want to be Laura?
I would be either.
Okay, we'll hold that to see who would like to be with Stacy in this scene.
I mean, if really nobody does it, I would of course do it, but I'm very open for anybody else to do it.
Well, maybe Simone, you and Stacy can warm up the
Totally
plate, as it were.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely. Good. Okay, so Rebecca, whom would you like? Whom would you like to do what?
I'm really open to either of you. What do you feel? Stacy, are you a very practical person?
Probably.
Good. Okay. Thank you, Laura. Okay. Fantastic. Okay, I'm very excited. So this is as large as I can make the script. Can you read it all right, Simone and Stacy?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, great.
Stacey?
Okay, so here we go. Stage direction.
Oh, sorry. Who am I in the end?
You are Laura.
Laura. And they're just the two of you. It's just a conversation between Laura and Gloria. And it's the first time that the audience meets both of you. And it's the first time that you've met each other, really. The setting, Gloria's bedroom is very modest, tucked up in the eaves on the top floor of an 1890s renovated school building. It feels private and cozy. Odd ceiling angles predominate with ambient light emerging from two large skylights. Outside is the Atlantic Ocean and wintry conditions that can only be sensed, not seen. There's a single entry. A closet door is blocked by a fold-out cot stashed in the corner. The interior contains simple New England furniture, an imposing secretary, a worn kitchen table used as a desk, a Shaker-style bureau with antique glass mirror, a 19th century single bed sitting high off the floor. While the furniture is understated, the decor is elegant and inviting. Persian carpets line the floor, along with a number of artworks. Shelves of well-worn tomes cover all available wall space. Books are stacked on desk and floor, while small ancient figurines line the desktop and secretary. The bed is a cloud of pillows and duvets. A bedside table has flowers, a small water pitcher, and some medical paraphernalia on it, but there are no tubes, wires, machines, or other devices present. Two ladder-back chairs are stored neatly by the bedside. There's no overhead lighting, only warm incandescent lamps. So at rise, which means when the curtain and the scrim lift, Gloria sits upright, feather pillows propped against the pronounced headboard. Her frame is weakened, but vital. Mid-afternoon, snow-bright light refracts through the skylights. She is alone, eyes closed, almost immobilized. A gentle knock is heard. Laura peeking in.
Professor Duclos, it's Laura. I'm back. Just had to pop out to talk to your girls again. May I come in?
Oh,
of course. Of course. Call me Gloria. Come in anytime. No need to knock.
You're dignified without being prudish.
As a lady soon to possess my own bedpan, this is the nicest thing I've heard all day.
We'll get to all that later. Glad you're thinking ahead, but maybe we should back up just a little bit.
I'm at your mercy.
And I am at your service.
I can't imagine dying is that easy for either of us.
There are as many kinds of deaths as lives lived, but you're right. Deaths that are chosen are different than sudden fatalities.
Different? You mean more difficult?
No, not more difficult, just more decisive.
Decisions at every step. I'll chip in, but then I guess there's a point when I'll be on my merry way. Not much help at that point to you or Albert and the kids.
You're getting ahead of yourself again, Gloria. Remember, we're in this together. Take it one day at a time, okay?
Laura, how long have you been doing this?
You mean home hospice? Helping people to die? It will be a decade next week, February 20th.
Well, I'm honored to be in your first decade. That's a long time. I don't know if I'll make it to the end of next week, but I think of you on the 20th, wherever I am.
Thank you, Gloria, and I'll think of you too.
She pulls a chair up to the bedside.
It's brave what you're doing, and it will be hard, I won't lie, but not painful. You don't have to worry about that. Emotionally and spiritually, it's complex, but physically, it's actually pretty straightforward. That's my domain, but I can try to help with the rest.
I guess I'm not sure what I need, where I'll be lacking until we move further along.
You've moved pretty far along already, Gloria. You've made the decision to die. You've brought your family to your side. Dr. Erickson will see you through, as he has done all these years. He's brought me on to support you. You've been on quite high doses of prednisone and methotrexate for your arthritis for a long time. Those are being adjusted now. Maybe we'll introduce mild midazolam, and we've ordered some more transdermal fentanyl patches for you. You've taken only water for 2 days now, so you've already drawn some significant lines. I need to ask you now if you'd like to continue.
Without a doubt.
Okay, all right then. So let's walk into this together. I'm going to ask you a number of questions now, Gloria. This is so Dr. Erickson and I can give you the best care and guidance possible within our legal bounds.
Yes, dear, I understand. I'm ready. Go ahead.
You've had rheumatoid arthritis for how many years now?
Okay, and then I'm going to break us there. Fantastic, you two are naturals. Beautiful. Okay, so what I'll do is between each of these scenes, I'll sort of take you through where that came from. The first thing is you might wonder why is this woman choosing to die if she just has arthritis? This is my mother's death certificate, and it was very interesting for me to actually read the causes of death, and that rheumatoid arthritis is actually listed as a cause of death. And I think that this is something that in the Dying with Dignity movement, as you know, there's been lots of talk, particularly around MAID, medical aid in dying, around chronic illness and chronic pain, in addition to life-ending terminal illnesses. And this is a very hot button topic. So this was very much on my mind as I was writing the play. You'll notice the date, of course, is 1998, the date of death. In America, in Maine, there was, and I believe there still is, no access to MAID. So my mother, as we will discover, had to do this herself through what I now know is called VSED, voluntary stopping and eating and drinking. But I didn't know what that was before. It was just literally that my mother was going to take matters into her own hands. So that really frames part of this episode. What was also, you might have noticed in a number of the characters whom we met in the cast of characters, that this country of Malawi figures in. This appears quite a bit in the play. It's very important. Late in her career, my mother got a Fulbright fellowship, and we moved to Malawi, which is a very small country in East Africa. And it was really the moment in her life that she had always been waiting for. She wanted to be able to, she'd love to travel, and she wanted to be able to give back in some way. Unfortunately, my mother got arthritis literally 3 months before we got on the plane. And her arthritis moved very, very quickly because she had terrible reactions to the medication that she was put on at a rapid rate. And there was really no medical care. So for a full year, she survived on just aspirin. So this is something that I uncovered recently in her files, in my father. Top physician listed here is John. He was actually a family friend of ours who lived on the same summer island that we did. And he was not her practicing doctor, but my father had obviously reached out to him because he was worried about my mother. So Jack Davy, as we called him, Jack writes, "Dear Gloria, I've been most disturbed about your health ever since Dr. Larry Anderson started discussing things with me 6 weeks ago. Larry Anderson was her rheumatologist. 4 days ago, I reviewed with him his latest phone call with you as of the February 3rd, 1986, where you apparently indicated that you were not doing well at all with your arthritis and gastrointestinal problems. You apparently stated that your weight had fallen to 96 pounds, some 25 pounds from what it was before. You have been under the care of an orthopedic surgeon and general practitioner in Malawi and have been found to have an enlarged liver and a cyst behind the knee with a recent SED rate of 125. Apparently, there are no laboratory facilities for following a person who takes medicine like methotrexate, a drug that Dr. Anderson felt that you should be tried on for your arthritis. He stated that you did take a recent 6-day course of prednisone and felt better for it. After discussing things with Dr. Anderson, I felt sufficiently concerned to consult Newell Auger, another family friend and doctor, because of the weight loss and his personal and professional regard and affection for you. He and I and Dr. Anderson all agree that there should be no delay in your packing up and leaving Malawi to come home to Portland to be cared for. It is impossible for us to determine what is really happening to you and what should be done now and in the future without having you close at hand." So the letter goes on they discuss talking to my father, and essentially what was happening is everybody was trying to get my mother to come home, and she refused. She said, I'm here to teach. I've signed a contract. I will not leave my students. I will come home when I'm ready. So this was quite an interesting moment for her. It shows you something about her resolve, but it also explains why her arthritis became very acute. It was untreated for an entire year, and this plays into things. The last thing that I want to highlight about that first scene as we move into now the second part of that scene with Laura is, this is my father's chicken scrawl. It's impossible to read, but so I have transcribed the part that I want you to know about. This was a letter that he wrote to me in 1997. And so note the date, May 6, 1997. My mother died in 1998 in February. So this is just 8 months before she dies or something. Dear Beck, had lunch with Kath, who's my sister, and Mika, her daughter, at Borders Bookstore, where we discussed Mom's situation at length. Our conclusion, much like yours, in realizing where she is and accepting who she is when making choices, which are hers to make at this juncture in her life. It was good that she shared her present thoughts and situation with us. If she hadn't, we would have been unprepared to comprehend, to understand her will in this manner. For the past years, she's endured an increasing deterioration in her condition, which would defeat the best in us. Now, in a paradoxical way, it makes each day more fully livable for her and for us as each day takes on a heightened warmth and richness of its own. So until I found this letter, which I'd completely forgotten about, I didn't realize that my mother had made it very clear to us some months before that she was going to make this decision. And that as a family, we were all in support of this and really understood why and how she would do this. And I think part of writing this play is, for me, has been about normalizing a decision like that. And showing publicly that families can come together around a decision as serious as this one. And that I love how my father says that in a paradoxical way, knowing that death was imminent made each day more fully livable, certainly for my mother. So these are some kind of key things. The final thing that I'll share that I also found in her papers and had forgotten about, and this was wonderful for me because in my death doula training, one of the first things that they have us do is write our own obituaries. And if you've never done that before, it's a really galvanizing exercise, I will tell you. So sure enough, I had forgotten. My mother had prepared her own obituary notice and had given each of us a copy of that so that when the time was ready, it would be printed in our local paper, which it was. So this just gives you a sense of how matter-of-fact she was about her death. And it really gave us the ability to be very present with her. And so you'll see as the play works its way through, she's less trying to come to terms with her death as she is trying to come to terms with her life. This is what I want to lead us into next. So I'll just, she starts to tell Laura about her own family. And so I just wanted you to have a picture of them in your minds. That's my mother in the back. In front of her is her 6'7" chain smoking brother, Shaw, who comes to pay a visit. We won't read those scenes, but they're very marvelous sort of quick dialogue between the two of them. There's her father, Shaw Sr. in the back, and then her mother, who we called Nana. Her name was Evelyn in the front. And it was a very tight family of four, very, very interesting people, all of them. So I will call on Simone and Stacy, if you don't mind finishing this scene. We're going to pick up where we left off. As you recall, Laura is asking my mother how long she's had rheumatoid arthritis.
May 1985. So that makes it almost 13 years.
Family history?
My mother, Evelyn, died from it or related complications. I suppose you'd say 2 years ago.
It meaning rheumatoid arthritis? I'm sorry, Gloria, that's very hard.
My brother, Shaw Jr., and I took turns every other weekend caring for her in New York City for 11 years. I don't want my daughters to repeat that.
I understand.
Other than that, no cancer, no heart disease, no other general scourges than I can think of.
And your father, still alive?
No, he died August 1986.
Those are recent losses. How does it feel for you to take this path, your own death, I mean, to follow this close behind?
I know the order of nature is to long outlive one's parent, but I'm steeped in the classics, Laura. In ancient tragedy, there's nothing natural about order where parents and children are concerned. That's the definition of tragedy. To be honest, though, I hadn't realized how sad I am to be alone, to be an orphan without them, until you asked.
Were you close?
Very. I mean, they had their own independent lives, hardly cloying. I guess you could even say we were latchkey kids. As parents, though, they were loving, demanding, but encouraging.
Who is we? How many siblings?
Shaw Jr. is my only brother. My father was Shaw Senior. My mother was Evelyn Livermore, maiden name Taylor. Becky's middle name, Catherine's middle name is Shaw. Such a Yankee thing, all this recycling, as if there weren't enough names to go around.
Occupations?
Me?
You first.
Retired professor, classics, Greek, Latin, ancient literature, history, archaeology, philosophy. The whole shebang.
Wonderful. I loved my college mythology class, but I'm terrible at languages.
Well, I'm terrible at medicine, so we are even. My brother retired from the University of Michigan, American historian. My father worked mostly for the US government, but also other positions in business. God, so many I can't count. Had quite a few overseas postings after we left the house. Economist by training, maverick by preference. My mother, Evelyn, trained as a physician early on at the Virginia Medical School. During the war, she treated returning servicemen. After that, she stopped practicing. About the time she and Daddy went to France, the Marshall Plan. My father was on the ground in Paris.
Goodness, there's a lot there. Is Shaw Jr. still alive, older or younger?
Older. He's on his way here tonight, in fact.
Okay, good. And I've already talked to the girls in Albert, so I have what I need from them. Now on to the nitty-gritty. Gloria, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, where would you put your daily pain level?
About 7.5 or 8.
Really? Every day?
For the past many years, yes. Is that troubling?
I usually get worried if someone says 5.
Oh, goodness. I see.
Gloria, you have been living with unbearable chronic pain.
You know, I think you're the first person to just name it like that. It has been unbearable. Both doctors, Erickson and Anderson, have tried everything for over a decade. There's no relief, Laura. And I can't stand any more pills, steroids or shots. Painkillers don't make a dent, just make me groggy, which I hate. This is not how I want to live my life. My daily regimen has been worse than 2 of my dearest former students. I take twice as many pills as they do now.
What's their diagnosis, your students?
AIDS.
Of course, I understand.
I'm ready to exit. I don't need this body anymore. It's become a hindrance to living. Isn't that a funny thing to say? I'm sorry to be so blunt.
I get it, Gloria. I really do. You don't have to apologize to me.
Thank you, Laura. My girls, Catherine and Becky, and Albert, they've been my greatest support. I don't have to apologize to them either. We have been talking about this for years, about this decision, what the right time would be.
Okay, that's important to know. You've all agreed that it's time. That's a huge stage. I guess we don't have to go through. I'll check that box then. Check.
Oh, sorry, check.
Alrighty, I'm sure you're getting weary, Gloria. We're almost done. Just some last vitals, mostly to get the dosing right for you. Are you okay for another minute or two?
I'm still at your mercy.
So the scrim falls so that we can, it's not a curtain, but it's a kind of gauzy exterior so that we can still see what's happening in the background, but it allows the audience to kind of be at a slight remove. So here's some final banter between the two of them. Laura, taking out her blood pressure cuff, stethoscope, and thermometer from her kit.
Wait, you've lost some. Guessing 115 now?
Death, the ultimate diet.
Oh, Gloria. Smoker?
Used to be, until 2 days ago.
No desire?
None yet. I'm still waiting.
Well, it won't kill you if the craving comes back. Drinks? How many a day would you say?
You're really rubbing it in, Laura. Cocktail hour is now the saddest time of day.
No desire?
I love a good Manhattan, but I seem to have lost the taste for it.
You'd be a cheap date now.
Laura, are you asking me out?
Beautiful. Lights fade to black as mouth thermometer inserted. More questions murmured. More giggles are heard. Laura finishes her vitals and her bag is packed. End of scene. Wow. It's so amazing for me to hear this be read. I'm so grateful. I just want to point out a few things about that scene. The first is obviously, we're trying to establish the character's motivation. So you start to see why my mother says, I don't want this body anymore. I'm done with it. It's now a hindrance to living. she has humor combined with seriousness. Laura is the kind of perfect foil for her. Something that we learned in our death doula training is this idea of acknowledgement. Laura is able to say, just name it, like, Gloria, you have been living with unbearable chronic pain. And you can feel my mother's relief that no one's actually just said, I feel you and I see you and I hear you. This was something that I don't know if my mother ever experienced, but before she was on her deathbed, but she certainly did experience that with home hospice. They have this, and I think death doulas do also have a really wonderful way of just being very clear and very honest about reflecting back to a person what they're going through. It was also important to really look at the behind the scenes again, to show really kind of what happens during an intake, to take this mystery away from these kinds of questions that occur. And these are also the pain scale that Laura uses. These are all things that I see in palliative care. This is the kind of establishing shot, as it were. And just wonderful reading. Thank you again, you two. There are
Rebecca, if I may very briefly switch levels for a second.
Yes.
You said we have 5 scenes. The thing is, we have altogether 90 minutes, and it's already 50 minutes in. So I think we should somehow be wary of the time, how we use it, right?
Yes, I was thinking the same. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Most of what I have to say has been said around the scene. So I think that at this point, we can probably move quite quickly through the remaining scenes, and then that will open up the field for us to have some Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay? Okay. So I'm going to fast forward now to Act 3. We're skipping over quite a bit, but this is another interchange while we're on sort of medical practitioners. I wanted to introduce you to Dr. Erickson. So if we could, if anybody's feeling more brave now that you know how easy and fun this is, and Gloria.
We have a few men in the audience. I don't know whether Harvey feels like being Dr. Erickson.
Harvey, you want to play yourself?
That sounds intimidating, but tape casting, is it?
Yeah. Oh, terrible! I know. Well, you could be Gloria. How's that?
That would be particularly challenging. As long as I'm going to be done, I've got a patient at 4, so as long as I can be done by 4.
Great.
I think that would work.
Good stuff.
Simone, do you want to carry on as Gloria since you're in the role?
Sure. Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Curtain rises. Scrim is across the stage till another night has passed. Behind the scrim, we see Laura once again ministering to Gloria. Catherine and Becky come in and out several times, changing pillowcases, getting items out of the closet, putting lotion on Gloria's arms and hands, etc. Activities all around her, but Gloria is quite still and removed from the scene. The women speak in muffled tones, neither ignoring Gloria nor pressing her to be any more present than she is. Girls leave. Laura remains, checking her clipboard. Dr. Erickson enters, nods to Laura. She signals she's leaving clipboard on Gloria's desk for him to study. She leaves silently. As the scrim lifts, Dr. Erickson gauges the situation. Is Gloria awake? He goes to her, but her eyes are closed. He takes in the whole scene slowly, sees where she will die, walks to the desk and begins perusing notes.
Oh. Hello.
Hello.
How am I doing, Doc?
Now, that's a trick question.
This is Dr. Erickson's line. Sorry about that here, Harvey.
Things are progressing.
No turning back then.
Are you seriously considering that, Gloria?
We are just picking up steam with all the revelations around here. Tempting to be a whole new me. unburdening to everyone.
Anyone unburdening to you?
My brother and Janine. Before I stole the floor, I think the girls might need to. Albert and I took care of that years ago. Divorce was the best thing that happened to our marriage.
Albert's a good man. Tell him you need your rest, though. He can stem the tide of guess. It's a lot to take in at this stage. It's not as if you can solve everyone's problem.
I think that's it for the guests. As for the kids, I'm afraid I'm not much good in the grand pronouncements or advice department at this point either.
Ever heard of the Knights of Templar, Gloria? The Cathars?
I know of them. The Inquisition and all those horrors?
They had their own belief system drawn from the very early Christian church, more in line with your people. The Platonists?
Yeah,
Platonists?
yeah.
Divine sparks imprisoned in tunics of flesh. Does that sound about right?
Dr. Erickson.
Pretty much. The Cathars had very interesting approaches to the end of life that might be, of interest to you. I know you're a very private person, Gloria, and yet incredibly close to your family and your students. People will find it hard to let you go. They're finding it hard to let you go.
Every time the door opens, another reason for me to stay alive walks in.
Precisely.
So the Cathars.
They had a practice, the Endura, their version of voluntary euthanasia.
It's such a loving word. The prefix "eu" means good, before the root "thanatos," death.
Not all of my patients are so up on their entomology.
Endura, on the other hand, doesn't take much translating.
It's how the Cathars saw their final days. In their minds, they wanted to hasten the process to not endure any longer than necessary. So they engaged in extreme fasting and they separated themselves from society at the end. The faster the immortal soul could leave the corruptible body behind, the better, and as far as they were concerned.
Where am I in my Endura?
Medically speaking?
Let's start there.
Well, in palliative parlance, it's called VSED. Maybe Laura used that term with you, voluntary stopping, eating, and drinking.
I saw it on my chart.
So technically, you are VSC right now. You've still got to go the D. You still got the D to go. Your body is still gaining hydration, but your heart and kidneys are straining. I imagine you're not passing much urine at all. Your body is trying to conserve resources. It's in survival mode.
But I don't want to survive.
That is why you are sleeping so much. But you still have lucid moments. Dehydration can have temporary analgesic effects. You may actually have brief moments of euphoria, but also some delirium.
Euphoria, delirium. Two more lovely Greek terms. They certainly did understand death.
Did I ever tell you that I snuck into your Epic Hero lectures a few years ago?
Dr. Erickson, you never told me.
I still remember the one you gave on the hero as leader. You were talking about the Aeneid. At the end, you focused on two other leaders in Virgil's story, not Aeneas, who survived, but Dido and Turnus, both of whom die. Very different deaths, mind you, but your descriptions of Dido still stay with me.
In what way?
And we'll end the scene there. Thank you both, Gloria and Dr. Shoshnikov. Okay, a couple quick things. The rest of the scene shifts quite significantly. Dr. Erickson and Gloria engage in a very interesting discussion around the character of Dido in the underworld. And he mentions that he snuck into her lecture. This is a real lecture that I actually found of my mother's. And so some of the dialogue that they have is actually based on this lecture that she gave about the idea of a kind of heroic death. A few other things in that scene to note is that we're really trying to set up the fact that my mother is going to be prepared to die alone. So when Dr. Erickson is talking about his endura, this is his gentle way of saying if Gloria really wants to hasten this opportunity, that she needs to stop even intaking water. And when Gloria says, every time the door opens, a new reason for me to stay alive walks in. Dr. Erickson is also saying to her, once you have finished receiving guests, you might need to, do this alone, and you need to sort of not have the reasons to stay alive. It's a very difficult conversation to have with anybody. And this scene was a real struggle for me, and I'm still working on it to try to show this communication that Dr. Erickson is having with my mother on terms that she understands. They are referring to the ancient world. The two of them have this really delicious conversation that would in most other times be very hard to have between a physician and a patient. The last thing is that scene presages the euphoria and delirium that my mother in reality did experience as she moved very far along in her death process.
Sorry, did you say she did or she did not?
She did. And also you'll remember the joking that she did with Laura about smoking and drinking. In her kind of euphoria, she wants to try, she fake smokes with her brother in their repartee. And in a scene with me, she wants to try to drink a Manhattan before she dies. And it goes terribly wrong. But what happens is Gloria basically says, look, I can't even have these last two pleasures. All of my desires have left. And so what is life without pleasure? That sort of euphoria, it's a very touching moment. It's also a bit comedic, but it's also very pathetic. Then the delirium. And I think what I'll do is I'm going to skip over the scene with Janine that we were going to read, and I'm going to go right to the last scene, which is with my sister. I'll have us read it, which will be a little difficult because it's a very physical scene. But we're going to try that, and then I'll tell you more about how it relates. So don't mind me if I'm just going to skip very quickly through this scene. I'll just say that in the play, two of my mother's articles are brought up. Catullus 11, if any of you have ever read this poem, it's just devastating. She refers to it very much in her dialogue in the play. She also was a real expert on similes, and this is a very wonderful article where she looks at Dido, who has these other aspects. So just to mention there. So this last scene, before we turn to a Q&A, this is my mother coming off the dock to Cushing's Island, which was a summer island where my family spent 10 years and more. And it was a very small island, no stores, no cars, no nothing. It was 20 families, and it was a kind of bliss in a way. And I mention that because it plays into this last scene. Okay, for this last one, there will actually be three of us. I'll read my own part. I exit quite quickly, but I would love to have somebody, if Simone is willing to stay on as Gloria, could we have somebody play my sister, Catherine? Oh, wonderful, Dasha. Thank you so much, Dasha. In this scene, Dasha, you'll notice that you and Gloria, it's very spare dialogue. So, if I can, maybe this time I actually will try to read some of the stage directions so that we can imagine the two of you engaging in this kind of dance, as it were.
Sure.
Okay, Act 3, Scene 2, setting, Gloria's bedroom. A few moments later, after the last scene, fully dark outside, a glowing full moon rises into the frame of the skylight. Warm incandescent lights on in the room. I just want to mention, the moon plays in quite importantly in the previous scene because one of Dido's, who becomes a kind of double of my mother, one of Dido's aspects is Luna. And so in the underworld, Dido kind of changes into Luna and becomes this beautiful sort of glowing figure who is reunited in the underworld with her dead husband. So the full moon is there for a reason. At rise, Catherine enters quietly, sees both mother and sister asleep. Becky is now in a chair close to her bed, her upper body slumped onto the bed with her head near her mother's. Kath takes a shawl from the chair and puts it around Becky's shoulders. She stirs gently, looks up. The siblings look at one another with understanding, the changing of the guard. So I slide off the bed. Hello, Belle. Whoa, that was a hard one, Kath. I think it was goodbye. I think she's ready, honey, ready to start really leaving now.
This week was the final send-off?
Now it's bon voyage on the ship deck. No more drinks in the departure lounge. Gangplank raised, propellers engaged. She's sailing, honey.
We're the last ones on the dock.
Mm-hmm.
I always hated that feeling, that actual feeling when we were on the summer island as kids. Mom would leave early on the early boat to go to the mainland. We watched from the dock. She just got smaller and smaller while I stayed the same size. I felt big, too big.
Well, you had to be big. You had to look after me.
No, Dad did that.
Dad made sure we were fed and came home before curfew, but you were the one who really looked after me, looked after a bunch of us kids, the leader of the pack.
I'm so tired of looking after everyone, Beck, including myself.
Who's going to look after you now? Kath puts her head in her hands, starts quietly, but then convulsively sobbing. Hugging, sighing, crying, breathing, swaying together ensues. The sisters are trying to collect themselves.
Kath, dearest.
Becky releases her sister, gives her the look of fortitude, squeezes her arms, leaves silently. Kath moves towards her mother's bed with decisive steps.
Mom.
At the bedside, she holds her hand.
Sorry. Mom, I'm right here.
Far away.
I hear your voice. You were calling me.
I'm here, Mom, but I wasn't calling you. I didn't want to wake you up.
But you needed me.
I do need you, Mom.
She lets go of her mother's hand to get a tissue.
But you were in the water, and I can hear you. But I can't see you. Your voice doesn't sound right. I'm coming.
Gloria, with fast and surprising strength, starts rolling off the bed on the opposite side, trying to swing her legs towards the floor. It's the first time we've seen her full body in motion. Catherine's hands are occupied with the tissue. She drops it, panicked, rushes to the other side of the bed as she sees what's happening, grabs her mother from the back in a bear hug.
Mom, wait, stop.
Mother and daughter struggle together at the bedside. Kath can't believe the conviction and power that this frail body possesses. She doesn't want to hurt her mother, but needs to restrain her from falling headlong onto the floor.
I'm okay, Mom, I'm okay. I'm right here. I'm behind you.
You're drowning.
I'm drowning?
You are calling to me. I can't get to you. I can't get to you in time.
Now angry, realizing something's preventing her from rescuing her daughter.
Who's holding me? Let go. Let go of me. My daughter is out there.
At her wits, but thinking fast.
Mom, I'm right here. Here I am. I need you to hold me. Help me. Turn around. I'm here. I'm right behind you. I need you to hold me, to save me. I'm so cold. Can you hold me? I'm here. Turn around and put your arms around me.
Gloria, in an obviously delirious state, nevertheless starts to respond to this prompt. She grows limp in Kath's arms. Kath holds her up while Gloria tries to turn, to reverse her position. It's a strange dance, these two battling and loving one another. Gloria manages to get her arms somewhat around her daughter's body as they face one another now. Kath allows herself to be embraced by Gloria's tiny frame. It's an awkward but powerful entanglement with mother and daughter ambiguously supporting one another by the end. Kath decides to stay within the delirium, to use it to her advantage.
Mom, let me rest you on the beach. The sand is warm. Feel the sun on your face. Come over here and lie down with me.
More jockeying ensues to finally get an exhausted Gloria back into her bed.
Let's lie down here together. The sound is warm. We're safe now, out of the water.
A long silence as they both breathe heavily on the bed.
You were drowning.
It's okay, Mom. You got us both back here to safety.
I leave you now then.
Because I'm safe? I still need you.
You're safe. I'll go now.
Are you going back into the water?
We are balanced now.
You mean I stay, you go?
We've both suffered.
It was too big for you, the way it's been too big for me.
I think it's too late.
I've been waiting for you my whole life. I just need your love. I see myself in you without you seeing yourself in me.
I am you. I don't know what to do with my pain and love. I never told you.
I've never told you either, all of my love and pain.
I didn't ask.
I tried to tell.
You never asked.
You never answered about how you felt.
You were born on my way out of pain, on my way to love. You never knew the story.
I hear it now, Mom. I'm understanding your story, and it's my story too now.
I think it's too late. Is it too late?
There's only now,
Now.
and here, and love.
I'd like to go back in the water.
The water, but no one's drowning anymore.
No drowning, swimming. I'd like to keep swimming. Swimming. Floating. Drifting.
So the scene comes to a close as the lights fade to dim and mother and daughter fall asleep together on the bed. The scrim comes across the stage. It's almost misty and murky and watery. And this bridges to the final scene in which there's no dialogue. Behind a scrim, the final brief scene occurs in complete silence in Gloria's bedroom. Catherine is still on her mother's bed. Becky and Laura come quietly in, see the detritus of the struggle, look puzzled with each other, and proceed almost to tidy up. Becky hugs Kath from behind in almost the same gesture as we have just seen with Gloria, and gently helps her to stand. They look at each other and walk to the secretary to retrieve the leather portfolio. That's in another scene. They make their way slowly out of the bedroom. Laura watches them leave, blows them a kiss, checks Gloria's vital signs, turns down the cot in readiness for her sleep, then one by one turns out the lamps as she walks through the room, goes to the skylight, looks up at the moon, the only remaining illumination, goes to Gloria's bed, strokes her hair, then lies down in the cot next to her. So that's how the play ends. We missed a bunch in the middle, but I think you get the sense of what I was trying to do, and I'd love to talk to you about it now. Thank you, readers. You are just fantastic.
Thank you, Rebecca. And that was emotionally really hard, I have to say, to read.
You, I don't know, you're doing some quick method acting over there, Simone. That was, yeah, thank you for being Gloria. That's a tough role.
And of course, it has also to do with the fact that I spent the last 9 days with my mother dying, kind of. So I know the situation pretty well in a hospice in Hanover, Germany, 11 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
I know some things about what's going on. Yeah.
And I think, this is the power of the arts, that it allows each of us, even though it's somebody else's story, it allows, I think, each of us to find some part of that story that resonates with us. It's kind of like, don't tell me, show me. And
right. And that is so super interesting. Don't tell me, show me, because at the university, academia is so much about telling. And the question is, I really sometimes wonder whether we are having a unilateral, one-dimensional way of communicating knowledge to students, of maybe communicating knowledge to each other, because it's a two-way line. Of course, we also, as professors, learn from students. And so the famous distinction between saying and showing, and this is clearly a form of showing by Wittgenstein, is something you might think about here. Like, should we perhaps open up our arsenal more and have more methodological reflections on how to teach humanities? Like in your case, you have a broad variety of things that you teach, presumably, and me too, and most of us here. Yeah.
And you're making me think, Simone, of a course that I just finished teaching last semester that was on the alternative narratives of the aesthetic experience was the title. And as I didn't have them read a single page of aesthetic philosophy, nothing. I said, I don't even want you to look this up. I don't want you to know how the term has been defined. I want you to define it for yourselves. And I want you to do that by telling your own stories. So the students first started telling 3-minute stories of what they thought an aesthetic experience was in their lives. And then they could watch each other's stories and they're like, oh, I had that experience too. And then at the end, we moved through a various series of exercises. And in the end, they were asked to interview a member of their family about an aesthetics experience that they had. And honestly, what these students produced from that was mind-bending. And also, many of them reported to me that they had never had that conversation with their parents or their grandparents or their friend. It just unlocked something very intense and very deep in them. And so that was the course. They defined aesthetic experience for themselves collectively. And it was very powerful.
Yeah, that is fabulous. I would like to talk more with you about it, but on a different occasion. Really cool about this form of pedagogy.
Exactly.
Yeah, but perhaps we open up the floor. There might be individuals in the audience who are really having a question or a feedback or something they want to share with Rebecca. Of course, I have also several questions, but I would like to open the floor now because we have another 15 minutes. Yeah, Stacy.
Rebecca, I'm just curious. Did the play emerge out of your experience in the death doula program? Were you encouraged to explore things in that program that then led you, or did the play actually come before you entered that program?
It's a great question, Stacy. The play came after the death doula program. And while we did experience many of Harvey's methods, we did not do this kind of creative writing in any way. It was more journalistic, I would say, and we did, practice with narratives of others. So I think that it's more that the doula experience kind of warmed me up and primed me to explore this opportunity. And as I say, I did not set out to write a play. I just thought maybe I'll write a little, article or something. And then the next thing I knew, this dramatic treatment was emerging. But I do think it would be, if I would ever teach a death doula course, I would definitely have people try to write just a scene that at the bedside of a dying person, somebody who they know or don't know, because it's amazing what having to write a dialogue draws out for you that is very unexpected.
Just to oh, sorry, Dasha has I'll come back later maybe.
You might as well just finish. It's okay. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to add that just to add to both your and Simone's experience, that I've also recently had this experience with my own mother, and I found your use of artifacts, letters and so forth, interesting. And in the case of my mother, who had a decline over a 15-month period, I also found myself sort of collecting the artifacts of her experience. So any communication we had, in terms of even appointment scheduling and so forth, I for some reason, and it might be because I come from anthropology, I might have that impulse, but it was almost the material aspect of her experience as well. But that's more of a comment than a question. So
no, it's a very important comment, Stacey, and I don't know what this genre is, but to me it feels like a kind of forensic fiction, because this forensic interest in the material remains is what actually led me to be able to create fictionalized scenarios. So I'll just give you a real example. You might have seen as I was skipping through the slides, there's a green notebook, a kind of leather case, and this is a real artifact. It was my mother's letter, like writing portfolio. Literally a year and a half ago, I was emptying it out so that I could use it myself. And what fell out but a tiny portion of a baby bracelet with my mother's name, girl, the 7.8 pounds, and a date in July on the 14th. And it says St. John's Riverside Hospital. My sister and I were not born at St. John's Riverside Hospital. So through that artifact, we found out that we probably have a sister somewhere in this world. So this is how powerful these artifacts can be. And so an entire scene of the play is my mother revealing this to Janine, one of the characters. It was something that my mother never revealed to us. I don't even know if my father knew. So she unburdens to Janine. And the only reason I could write that scene is that it came out of an actual material find that I made that has changed our lives. So thank you for mentioning that. Dasha or Harvey, Harvey, before you have to go, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm still processing it all, Rebecca. It was remarkable and moving. In medicine, I mean, we tend to be very kind of data-driven and methodologic, and bringing objectivity to whatever we do. And I mean, I think an experience like this, it shakes you up and shows you that there are different kinds of pedagogy. I mean, I've tried to use some of that in my own teaching with residents in the past and over the years. I can remember years ago, I was, asked to teach about death and dying to psychiatry residents, and rather than, I think I knew enough about this kind of approach, or at least had some kind of an appreciation to know it would really be kind of dull and uncreative to kind of go through a series of facts and figures about, the prevalence of delirium, depression, anxiety, and just kind of give them this factual information that they would probably readily forget.
Yeah.
So I would assign them, the death of Ivan Illich. I would assign them, Jean-Dominique Bobet, to say, have an experience.
Yes.
And so I need to process this more, but I just wanted to say thank you for giving us this experience. It was extraordinary, and I hope I did okay at my typecasting.
Oh, fantastic, Harvey. You can help me like perfect Dr. Erickson's lines when it comes to it.
I'm not sure about that, but no, this was really very special.
Oh, thank you so much. And really, I'm truly thankful for you all sharing this with me. It's the first time I've ever heard this read. So it's a very, very moving moment for myself as well. Yeah. Thank you, Harvey. And I'm a great fan of, I love your work.
Well, thank you. That's very kind.
Dasha, did you still have a question?
Yes, absolutely. First, I just wanted to thank you for sharing this play with us. I know it's very sensitive for you, and honestly, it's an honor. My question is also part of it is a comment. So I watched this show on Netflix. It's called Maniac. It's with Jonah Hill and Emma Stone. And Emma Stone's character in the show, her little sister dies in a car accident while they were on a road trip. And she, after like the situation after, she's not in a good place, and she signs up for this drug trial out of a necessity for money.
Yep.
And in the drug trial, it's consistent of 3 stages, and the 3rd stage is confrontation. And in this psychedelic haze, she is confronted with her sister, and she gets to say all of these things that she couldn't, and it's happening in her head.
Yep.
It's not real life. But after, it's a personal catharsis for her, and she comes to peace with it, and she finally gets her life back on track. So my question is this play a personal catharsis in the pursuit of for peace with your situation, or what is the root of the birth of this play?
Such a beautiful question, Dasha, and thank you for that reference. I don't have Netflix these days, but I will sign up for a free trial to see that show. Yeah, my answer is going to be maybe somewhat unexpected, because yes, it's been cathartic for me, but the catharsis I'm hoping is happening for my mother, who, of course, I won't know if that's happening because she's dead, but there's something about allowing her to speak and to say these things that I wish she had the chance to say to us. And it's very, I think the one thing that I am still struggling with is we were a very close family, and I thought there were no secrets. And to find out that there were all of these other secrets, it really made me realize like how devastatingly traumatic they had been for her, that it's as if she locked away this whole other life. And so another gesture towards an answer for you, Dasha, is that when I went to my little cabin, I did bring a number of articles of my mother, some of which I'd read, but most of them I hadn't. And what I realized in reading them in some is that my mother, through an academic scholarly approach, had actually been telling us that story. If you know anything about Dido, in the Aeneid, she falls in love with Aeneas, who is fated to found Rome. So he's got fate ahead of him. He's in love, but he knows he has to keep on going. So Dido, who is a widow, her first husband had died. She's the queen of Carthage, falls head over heels in love with Aeneas, decides to give herself to him, and then he abandons her. And she's so crushed by these double abandonments of these men she loved that she kills herself on a funeral pyre. And it's just this unbelievably tragic story. She's in the underworld. Aeneas, who's still living, is allowed as the hero to make a journey to the underworld and to emerge again. He meets Dido, and Dido rebuffs him and essentially regains her composure and her wholeness, and she turns and she meets in death her former husband and lover. So this is a strange parallel to my in my mother's case, that she not only did she have a child, but before that she had I found out later, after she died, a very, very serious love affair when she was at Oxford in 1951. And it's still a bit of a mystery to me. I don't know if I'll ever find out, but the engagement was broken off. And I don't think she ever forgot this man. So she is like a wounded Dido herself. And so I realized how much she had been writing about her own life by writing about Dido as her kind of doppelganger in pain. The other great topic of hers was Catullus, and this poem 11 that I pointed out to you. Catullus writes about, again, the hearts being broken, and Lesbia was the lover of Catullus, and she broke his heart, and he broke her heart, and it's a devastating poem. And my mother writes about it with the kind of knowledge that goes beyond just being a classicist. It's like she felt this. So these are other cathartic moments that I'm trying to sort of rechannel, because I think through my mother's writing, that was her way of getting over some of these tragedies in her life. So the play allows her to both bring in her classical references, but to also come clean, as it were, to other characters, not myself or my sister. It's very interesting. And one of the characters says to her, Gloria says, "This is terrible. I've never even told my own children this." And Jenny, one of the characters, says, "Sometimes it's easier to speak to others. You're not so close to the fire."
Rebecca, I have to run. I've got a patient. I left you a paper in the chat if you're interested.
Thank you so much, Harvey. I'll download that quickly. Thank you.
Okay. And thank you for this. It was wonderful. Just wonderful.
Wonderful. I hope we get to meet in person sometime. All of
very
you.
much like that. I've learned a lot.
Oh, take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for coming. Yeah, super fascinating. I mean, we are officially out of time. I don't know whether we have another 10 minutes or so. Ekene, should we stop right now, or can we still talk a little bit?
I think if you guys have a few questions, I think there should be room for some more questions. So please, by all means, go ahead.
Thanks a lot.
I also wanted to jump in and say thank you so much, Rebecca. This was so beautiful. Yeah, I'm also currently making work that is about death and dying. And so this event was also really helpful for my research and how I'm working through grief with my own work as an artist. So thank you so much for doing this, and Simone also for organizing.
Yeah, and I kind of thank you for, I'm really profoundly happy that you get something important for you out of this. And yeah, thank you for your marvelous help in organizing all of this. You are such a wonderful, supportive element in all of this. And apart from that, you are such a great poster creator. Yeah, so this poster was great, and the previous one was also breathtaking. So yeah.
Yeah, and Ekene, good. I'm so happy to hear that you have creative means to work through some of these ideas. And yeah, sometimes, I mean, my students and I talked a lot about this. Like, it's the nature of the sublime in many ways. Like, some things just don't translate into language. These experiences are so profound and so deep that we have to pull on other forms to move our way through.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah. So is there any other question? There have been still a few here who haven't spoken up. I was quite reminded a little bit also of Simone de Beauvoir, who has also written about her mother's last time in death, right?
Yes.
So did you have some patterns or samples that inspired you in this? Maybe not, right?
Well, of course, we all think about Joan Didion and, people like that. And I don't know, has Sheila Heti been writing about death recently? And in some ways, I don't think it was purposeful, but I did not read any other literature. I almost felt like I needed to come at this my own way. And now, of course, I'm terribly interested in reading about death and dying. So I get books out of the library all the time. But Yeah, I kind of wanted to see what I could do without other people's voices in my head at first.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I think this is really good.
Mm.
And you mentioned that most likely on the basis of your death doula training, you are now volunteering at the Jewish General Hospital. How does it exactly look like, and how much time do you devote to it, and in what form?
Mm. It's interesting, you know, I was at the palliative ward before, many years ago, 10 years ago. I was volunteering for a couple of years, and then I had to move to Chicago to take a job, so I let it go, and then I came back and I was deaning again, and I just didn't have time. So there was an 8-year gap between my volunteer gigs. And boy, so much is the same and so much is different. First of all, beautifully, I walked into the ward 6 months ago, and the same team of people were there, same head nurse, same, like, it was astonishing. And that says something about the palliative ward, that these folks can go anywhere, and they love that ward. They are so devoted to it. So that was very consoling and refreshing for me. But what has changed tremendously, and I don't know if this is a situation in Quebec, or I'm not sure, but patients are coming into the ward at a much later stage in their dying process.
Mm-hmm.
We used to get to know patients and families for, 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. They would be with us. And now I'm lucky if I come in the next week and they're still the same 12 people that I met last time. So and when I look at their intake, they're coming directly from the ICU, which is very unusual. Oftentimes they were coming from oncology, somewhere else within the hospital. I'm seeing lots of admissions now that are coming in from Emerge and ICU. So I don't know what that signals. But anyhow, on the ward, I mean, a lot of what the volunteers do at the Jewish General is really just, we are there for the families and for the medical staff. We don't perform any medical interventions, of course, but I will often sit with a patient and relieve their families if they've, oftentimes been there all night long for the past 6 days straight. I will assure them that I will be here, and I will call them if anything is happening. I will be attending to physical needs, warm blankets, food, these kinds of things. And but a lot of it is just trying to have a sixth sense about what's needed without people having to ask for it. There's a lot of as many of you might know who are working in this field, you have to be very tuned to nonverbal cues. So it's a very quiet, but a very sense-based place. I would is one way to qualify the kind of atmosphere that I experience.
Mm. Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. So
I have a question.
Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I can't be on camera right now, but now that you've had this experience with your mother, and then you've had plenty of experience with other patients and other people, this might be too personal, but what do you think you would do?
Yeah, I love that question, Erica. Of course, we all think, like, you might say you're going to do this and do that, and then the time comes and you freak out and you just say no. But no, I'm with my mom. I mean, I am very clear about the fact that when my quality of life is such that I'm not enjoying my personhood, I am thrilled about MAID. I think it's a fantastic introduction. I think we should have choice about everything in our lives, including our death. None of us have to take that choice, but the fact that it's available to us, I think, is very important. Because there was I can't remember whose TED talk it was, but it was very, what I would say, fortifying to realize that, we all think that we're going to have this like quick demise or fall asleep and, not wake up. Like maybe 2% of us will die that way. The other 98%, it's going to be a slow, either like this or like this, right? And so aging, there's a lot of talk about aging at my university. There's a wonderful center for aging, and that's hard. In some ways, like dying, as Laura says, like dying is actually kind of easy. The body part is pretty straightforward. So yeah, I hope that when it comes to my time, if it's not a sudden death and it's a decisive death, yeah, I hope that I'm able to, like my mother, bring people around me and be very clear about my needs, and to make it as, in a kind of way, matter of fact as possible. There's another line that I have my mother say, which is something you probably heard, that, death is easy for the dying. It's hard for the living. I mean, we're the ones who are left behind.
Yeah, I think the caregivers often suffer, differently, but,
Yeah. Yeah. How about you, Erica? Have you decided what your end might look like?
Yeah, I think I'm on board with the MAID as well. I had a friend a couple of years ago who decided to go that route. She was post-transplant. She'd had 3 transplants in her life. And she just got to a point where and I think for her too, it's like your mother said that, I don't want my daughters have to go through this. She felt like she was dragging the people she loved through a process that made her feel like she was taking something from them.
Yeah. There was a moment recently where these two things came together, MAID and the palliative ward. It was my 3rd day back, and I was brought around by Lucy, who was training me, and she said, "Oh, Rebecca, I want you to meet Madame Lafarge." I can't remember her name, and I wouldn't tell you what it was anyway. So I went in to meet Madame. She was this very, very sophisticated Quebecoise, beautiful white hair that was being brushed by her daughter and set. And she was very elegant in her hospital bed. And she just beamed as soon as Lucy walked in, and she said, "Lucy, I am so happy to see you, my dear. And nice to meet you, Rebecca." She said, "I just wanted to say goodbye. Tomorrow I'm going home to die. I'm so happy to be passing the torch on, and I'm going to be with my husband and my daughters." And she looks lovingly at her children who are all around her. And she was just the absolute picture of kind of joy and calm in this decision. And it was like, that was day 3. And I thought, wow, to experience that, it felt very, very special. And I really had such admiration for this woman. She's my hero.
It's lovely.
Oh, we can't hear you, Simone.
Thank you. Sorry. I think this is maybe a really good point to finish up our event today. A good last word, so to speak. I hope that there will be an opportunity in whatever partly similar combination of individuals to continue with this next year. So when we go perhaps into a 2nd round of this cluster, which I'm aspiring to do, and when the pandemic hopefully isn't there anymore, so that we can meet in person here in the University of Manitoba, then perhaps at the conference we can really continue these things. So thank you so much, Rebecca, for this really super, experiential, creative, very moving, very honest, very smart, and heart-opening encounter. And thanks to all of you who came and who supported all of this.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Ekene, again. And I wish you a great either evening or afternoon.
Yes, and have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Thank you so much for being a part of this, and for being the first public reading. And thank you, Simone, for this wonderful invitation. I wouldn't have come this far without you. So thank you.
My big pleasure. Thank you.